Hello, today I'm joined by Charlotte Jeffrey Campbell from The Able Agent. Charlotte, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, David. Good to be here.
It's good to have you here. Now, this week is National Apprenticeship Week,
Yes.
and we all talk about apprenticeships as being a good idea to sort of engage younger people who may become the stars of tomorrow,
Yeah.
but very few of us actually do it well. You guys have really broken it. So tell us how it works.
Yeah, I think we have got it right. I think it's thinking of it from the apprentice's point of view. So quite often they're 18, 19, 20, and they're looking for something. So when you're marketing or advertising a job role, you need it to sound of interest and that there's something worth doing. And I think what we miss out on our industry is letting the young people know how many cool things we do. I mean, they're out and about doing viewings as they progress. They're not stuck in an office. They're learning social media. They're often learning digital marketing, sales skills, customer service, law. So actually, if we talk about how much they learn, it's really valuable. But I also recognize that if you're 18, 19, 20, you might not want to be pigeonholed in just being in property. You might want something more generic. So we've combined our apprenticeship as a two-pronged attack. So you do business admin, which is quite nice. It's quite generic. And, not everyone's going to stay in property. We've got to be honest as well. They might want to go somewhere else and do something.
Use it as a stepping stone.
Admin gives them a usable qualification at level 3 for the future. And our business admin qualification is delivered with a property focus. So you learn about the good property brands in our industry. You don't learn about Apple, you learn about property brands. Kerfuffle, perhaps we maybe ought to introduce into our training program.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, well, you learn about brands. And then alongside that, they also study the level 3 certificate in property advice and practice, which is estate agency and lettings combined. So they come out of it at the end of 15 or so months with a combined business and property apprenticeship, but it can take them in all areas. But it just makes it more relevant to a young person. And we've produced a little video that we're giving away free, so I'll let you have the WeTransfer link for that. So people can just download the video and help them recruit, because we want to attract new talent into this industry. We need it desperately. And the conversations I'm having with agents is that they're finding it very difficult to get the right person. And I think that's the problem. But if you're only looking for the person when you desperately need a person to start tomorrow, you're always going to limit the opportunity to find the right people. So it's about starting a bit earlier, I think.
So in terms of when and how an agent should recruit for new personnel, and certainly when they're looking at apprenticeships, some people have this sort of philosophy of ongoing and everlasting recruitment where you're always constantly reviewing applications and trying to attract new talent into the business. And if you find the right person, you try and sort of find them a position that fits. Is that still the way?
Absolutely, because I think I was speaking to an agent yesterday and he said exactly that. He said, I'm always recruiting, because for me, having the right person in the business from a succession planning point of view is more important to me than feeling like I'm paying a little bit extra. But the apprenticeship wage it's buttons, really. Only talking around a £5 an hour for your apprentice for that 15-month period. Now, we don't ever advocate that that's all you pay, but we do say, look, build in targets on the projects they complete. But again, think about your apprentice's project as a benefit to your business. So what about your apprentice producing your competitor analysis, a project on that? Or what about looking at your social media as a project? Or what about writing some guides as a project? Now, you may end up elements of tweaking it to make it business worthy, but if a lot of that work is done and they feel empowered to do it, that's valuable. So it's about treating the apprenticeship as a benefit to your business in terms of what they're doing. But then also you need the right team to help that apprentice learn. And I think the biggest problem is agents are too busy to bed that apprentice in.
Well, I was going to ask you that, because I think the general theory is that, okay, this is great, but I don't have the time. It's time consuming to train somebody who is a fresh starter with absolutely no background at all. You've got a solution for that, I'm hoping.
Well, I think it's about having a team of people that know what they're talking about. So we've got Dawn and her team who do the business admin. So they train that person. You do two days a month off the job. So don't hire an apprentice if you want them to do a full-time job and work every hour that God sends. You can't. You've got to be realistic in what you're doing when you're hiring an apprentice. You have to give them 2 days to learn and study. But if those people supporting them are genuinely bringing them on, then the value in that time off the job is huge. So Dawn and her team look after the business side. And Catherine, our fantastic ex-colleague of mine, she's just one of the best people you'd ever want to train your team. She's worked as in a big agency network. She's trained and developed and recruited hundreds of people, and she's really inspiring in her own right. But what she does is she does the practical bit that the business owner hasn't got time to. So the practical, are you registering the buyer on the mailing list well? Do you know how to book a market appraisal? And she does that using Able Agent. So she briefs them on what to do on Able Agent, gets them compliant, doing all their AML and the data protection. So that's all done for you. You don't have to worry about that. They then crack on in their week and do their work, and then they can catch up with Catherine and ask those silly questions, because they do need someone to refer to.
So it's almost like constant mentoring and monitoring as you're going along.
And you do it in a group. So the 15 we've got on our first cohort, I mean, they're phenomenal. They're interacting with each other. They're getting feedback from each other. They're getting ideas from the different businesses. So they learn from their peers and Catherine and Dawn. And it's
I was going to ask you this. You've already had that first group. I know you think it's amazing. What was their feedback?
Oh, we've had. I'll send you the copy, but the feedback has been brilliant. And I think when you go into the industry, one of our apprentices, Aldo, had said it feels like it's this quite laid back, and all people do as estate agents is you sit and drink coffee in your office, and he said the reality is like this attack on your senses, but for an 18-19-year-old coming into the industry, it just wasn't what he expected. And I think that's why sometimes it fails, because they have unrealistic expectations of what it's like. But that is also why when you recruit, you've got to recruit and interview and really get to know your apprentice well. Now, we can help with that, but also we say to you as a business owner, look, you've got a network, you've got investors, vendors, landlords, you've got people on your database, you've got social media contacts. You can't tell me that there aren't people out in that network that are thinking, I'd love to be an estate agent, or my son's always been interested in property. I'd like to, that's where you get the people from, because they've got a passion, and that's when it works.
I think that training element of it is so important, because you can recruit whoever you want, and they will pick up good habits and bad habits from the people around them. But sometimes you don't necessarily want them to learn by osmosis all the time. They need some structured learning, and they need to hear from somebody else who isn't you, because you're biased, but they need to hear from somebody else how it's done, and that there is a sort of industry standard. And I saw one of your stats, which is quite staggering, that during 2022 you delivered 15,000 hours of training.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Last month we did 1,669 hours of training. I worked it out. So if an average trainer works 6 hours worth of training a day, delivered training, it's the equivalent of 15 full-time trainers we did in 1 month.
And so what that means is that there's a need for it, but also businesses are and particularly estate agency businesses, are acknowledging that at the moment you need to skill up the people that you've got, because the recruiting can sometimes be a bit miserable. If you're going out there into the marketplace imagining that somebody's going to turn up fully trained and fully ready to do the job,
and that market's not there. People are moving and changing, and the problem is our salaries are low. And I think we need to be honest about that as well, that you can't just be looking at the apprentices as cheap labor. You've got to look at it as you're giving them a career opportunity, and you've got to give them bonuses and incentives along the way. But again, not everyone's incentive is financial. One person's might be a career pathway, and what am I going to be doing in 5 years' time? And I think the audience that we're dealing with now are much more motivated by training, development, and personal growth than probably our generation was. And I think agents who are probably our generation as the employer need to get with the understanding what their employees want now, and it is shifting.
So there's one thing sort of concentrating on what we want as sort of business owners, what our employees might need, what our teams need, but our customers as well. At the end of the day, there's a benefit to them in all of this training, because they want somebody who knows what they're talking about.
I was on a call before. I told you I was on my HubSpot. I was on a call with a guy who's a HubSpot trainer. Well, this is our CRM system as Able Agent. And I told him what I did and explained. He said, "Oh, I've just moved." Honestly, the agents were rubbish. And he said, all they did is send me an email of stuff I didn't want, or directed me to Rightmove. And I thought, oh, I don't want that to be your experience.
Yeah.
Said, do you know what I wanted? And this is no word. What I wanted is someone to ring me up, talk me through what I needed, when I needed to be there, what I needed, what kind of property I was after, and just sort it out for me and give me some advice. And I said, well, that's funny enough. That's exactly what Able Agent's been designed to do, to try and help train agents to offer that. But the market is shifting. And I say it till I'm blue in the face in my blogs. The consumer is changing. They want advice and guidance in this market. They don't just want a load of nonsense emailed through and no contact.
And without the backing to be able, and the knowledge in order to give that advice and content, if you like, and hand-holding to people that are moving, you're also not going to be able to get a decent fee if you're not able to prove value. And how you prove value is how valuable you are to them. And people will pay more for a profession.
Well, and again, I was on a Facebook group the other day, and people say, I'm struggling to get instructions signed up. And and everyone's reaction was, I've looked at my fee, and I'm thinking, but nobody actually cares about the fee, because if you do your job right and you get the deal, you can adjust your fee accordingly if you need to. The process has got to be to get the deal at the right fee. But then also you have to be confident walking away sometimes, because it's not profitable. And again, I wonder how many times I talk about this with property management. If you take on a substandard, grotty property that's going to be a nightmare with condensation, a nightmare with damp and repairs, and your minimum fee is 80, 90 quid a month to manage that property, you can't tell me that that's a profitable property, So you've got to look at all of it from a business-minded.
I think that is one of the hardest business lessons to learn, and unfortunately, we only learn it too late in life, because at some point we sacrifice taking on the right sort of business and being discerning and turning away the wrong sort of client or the wrong sort of business. And the reason we do that is because we take the view that we need as much as we can possibly get, and I can't afford to turn away business. But the truth is, some of the most expensive lessons you will ever learn in life will be what happens if you take on a client that you just cannot gel with, that just will never see value in your service. And I think that's a massive business lesson. But
and you can't learn that as a youngster, but you've got to learn the best practice. So whether you're an apprentice or an experienced member of the team, quite often you don't understand how the law sits underneath what you're doing and what that all means. And we deal with, we've got agents 30, 40 years experience on our platform ringing us up going, I didn't realize how much I didn't know. It's not just basic stuff, but sometimes you just need some training to fill in the gaps, because we've all got gaps in our knowledge. I guarantee it.
Yeah, no, 100%. So if anybody's out there thinking about apprenticeships, I think the right place to start is booking a call with Charlotte and her team, and just to see sort of, don't just use, a lot of people squander that apprenticeship opportunity. They bring them in and it's a sink or swim scenario. They think it's cheap labor almost. Either they're going to really prove themselves and be amazing, or they're going to blossom into this wonderful, but people don't just naturally blossom. Sometimes you need to feed them, you need to nurture them, and you need to give them the best possible chances of success, which is where the training is.
I couldn't agree more, David. I think sometimes some of the best estate agents were the slow burners. That there weren't the gobby ones, and I was quoted saying that in the Negotiator magazine the other day. I don't remember saying gobby, but maybe I did. But the gobby ones, sometimes we're good salespeople, but we're not good listeners. Well, listening is the key to this industry. But I think it's about making sure that whatever your team structure and whoever you've got in it, that they're confident and that they realize that this market is slightly different. We've got a changing environment out there, so we've got to work differently. But our inquiries on Able Agent and our activity has gone through the roof, 50% more this month than last. That's a huge jump in activity.
And I think when we look at apprenticeships, you should also use it as an opportunity to challenge what you think about what young people want from an estate agent. Because I'm what am I now? In my early 40s, to be kind to me. But the truth is, I've never stopped thinking myself as a younger person, but I realize now that I'm now seen as being the elderly in the industry. But
Me too.
to get a perspective of how, say, Gen Z look at this,
Yeah.
or how young people look at our profession, but also what they want in terms of communication from an agent. I mean, I did this last summer. My daughter came to work with us here at Kerfuffle. And so I went back to the beginning to explain to her what we all do as estate agents and how Kerfuffle helps. And, you know, you'll get a perspective that you hadn't even thought of. And it's valuable. You pay good money for that kind of
You
feedback.
get them to do your social media.
Very true. I think, you know, picking out good. A lot of people are scared to venture into one form of media or another. Some of us stick only to LinkedIn because we think it's a professional space. Some people are veering off into TikTok. But the point is,
They've got the expertise.
You need your perceptions challenging as well. So take that opportunity to really sort of get to grips with that younger crowd.
I wrote a blog the other day about what social media articles and guides you should produce. But I said, look, don't forget to give your marketing person an access login to Able Agent, because all the content in Able Agent explaining condensation, explaining consumer laws and all those sorts of things, they are really useful to translate into guides for your audience. We've got a young girl who's our marketing intern. She creates some fantastic stuff. Never been an estate agent, but she uses our content to create it.
It's an invaluable resource, and anybody that hasn't checked it out should book some time with Charlotte. Yes. Charlotte, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Very welcome.